When Melania Trump filed a lawsuit against Jasmine Crockett, few expected it would become a public reckoning until a single witness shifted everything in under 10 seconds. The instant the headline appeared, it felt as though Washington itself shook. Former First Lady Melania Trump sues Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett for defamation. It wasn't gossip or theory. It was real. Melania's name printed clearly at the top of the legal filing. For many Americans, the question wasn't whether controversy would erupt, but how fierce it would grow. Think about it. A former First Lady, someone usually reserved and distant from political disputes, chose to take a rising Democratic figure to court. That alone was enough to guarantee a media storm. Cameras outside the courthouse, reporters clustering for comments, and networks running constant coverage. But what truly shocked people was that this case wasn't about policy or politics. It was about words. Statements Jasmine Crockett had made sharp, direct, and unapologetic that Melania's legal team argued crossed into defamation. And in today's digital world where every phrase can be clipped, replayed, and endlessly analyzed, the stakes couldn't have been higher. It all began in a Dallas courthouse early in the morning with Texas heat hanging heavy in the air. Crowds gathered. Protesters holding signs stood beside Trump supporters draped in flags. Reporters leaned over barricades calling out to anyone who looked official. A local woman whispered to her friend, "This feels bigger than just a trial. Feels like history." Inside the courtroom buzzed. Journalists, legal analysts, and curious citizens filled the wooden benches. Two women, vastly different in demeanor, faced each other. Melania, elegant, composed, deliberate; Crockett, fiery, confident, and unwilling to be silenced. "Mrs. Trump versus Representative Crockett," the clerk announced, and the entire room turned forward. This wasn't a routine lawsuit. It was a clash of legacies. To understand its weight, you need to know Jasmine Crockett. She's not one to avoid controversy. A freshman congresswoman from Texas, she built her career on bold statements, tough questioning, and giving voice to communities long ignored in politics. She doesn't whisper, she projects. That unapologetic energy helped her rise quickly and may have been what drew Melania Trump, usually distant from confrontation, to take her on directly. Still, lawsuits are rarely simple. Melania's attorneys argued that Crockett's remarks went beyond politics, that she implied things about Melania's financial involvement, carrying reputational consequences serious enough to demand legal action. To Melania's supporters, this was about defending dignity and setting boundaries. To Crockett's allies, it was an attempt to silence a voice unafraid to challenge power. Cameras clicked as the lawyers entered. Reporters scribbled notes frantically. Every detail mattered. The color of Melania's dress, the firmness in Crockett's stare, even how each adjusted their posture. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight over image and perception. Crockett leaned toward her lawyer, whispered something, and received a nod. Melania remained composed, her face unreadable, though her grip on her pen was tight. The contrast between them was striking. Melania, careful and controlled, speaking rarely but deliberately. Crockett, outspoken and assertive, a challenge to convention itself. The first minutes made one thing certain. No matter the verdict, both women would leave changed. Reputations were on the line. Secrets hinted at the nation watched, waiting for a spark that could redefine them both. Outside, chants filled the air. Some supporting Melania, others cheering for Jasmine. Police stood guard as tension simmered. But inside that wooden courtroom, silence spoke louder than the crowd. Everyone sensed it. This was about more than a lawsuit. It was truth versus perception, courage versus restraint, and the risk of putting words on trial. Even before opening arguments, the question lingered. Who would emerge stronger, and whose legacy would fracture under pressure? To see why this case struck such a chord, you need to understand who Jasmine Crockett truly is beyond the headlines and viral clips. Before her seat in Congress, she was a defense attorney in Dallas, representing clients with little money or influence. She was known for late-night calls from worried parents, for standing by people with nowhere else to turn. She never backed away from a tough case, recalled Andre Phillips, a local activist who'd worked with her. She wasn't afraid of judges, prosecutors, anyone. She believed in looking people in the eye and telling the truth, even when it hurt. That fearless honesty, sharp enough to sting, carried her from local courtrooms to Capitol Hill. She didn't soften her words for approval. She sharpened them to make an impact. When she won her congressional seat, critics assumed she'd calm down, play politics like everyone else. Instead, Her voice only grew louder on committees. In interviews across social media, Crockett became known for her quick, unfiltered responses when someone tried to dismiss her or cut her off. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for those who couldn't. For every person who told her, "We don't have a voice up there," Jasmine Crockett became that voice. Her refusal to follow political etiquette made her a target. Lobbyists dismissed her. Politicians rolled their eyes and conservative media called her reckless. Yet to many progressives, she was a breath of fresh air. Through all the criticism, Jasmine stayed composed. So when she made remarks about Melania Trump's involvement during certain Trump-era dealings, few were shocked by her boldness. But the reaction caught everyone off guard. Instead of ignoring the comments, Melania took action. On a morning talk show, a reporter asked, "Why Jasmine? Of all the Trump critics, why single out this Congresswoman?" It was a fair question. Jasmine wasn't a household name in Congress. She didn't chair any committees or have presidential ambitions. Yet something about her words struck deep enough that the First Lady decided to take her to court. Crockett's strength was her fearlessness. She couldn't be intimidated or silenced. Legal threats didn't weaken her. They fueled her. That made her dangerous to someone like Melania, whose public persona was built on composure, restraint, and elegance. Jasmine was the opposite. Direct, unfiltered, and unapologetic. Clear as throat. For many watching, this wasn't merely a legal dispute between two women. It represented a clash between two versions of America. On one side, a congresswoman who rose from modest beginnings, fought through law school, and built a platform on authenticity. On the other, a first lady known worldwide for grace, wealth, and careful control of her image. When the lawsuit was filed, Jasmine didn't retreat. She leaned in further. Standing outside her Dallas office, she told reporters, "If telling the truth about power lands me in court, then that's where I'm meant to be. I don't run. I don't hide." Her words replayed across every major network. Supporters praised her courage. Critics called it arrogance. But everyone agreed on one thing. Jasmine Crockett wasn't afraid. That fearlessness defined her political identity. It made her compelling, unpredictable, and dangerous to the status quo. This lawsuit wasn't just about legal claims. It was a test of whether a woman who spoke truth to power could endure a direct challenge from one of America's most influential figures. Behind the scenes, though, her staff saw the toll. Long nights, piles of legal files, and moments of quiet strain. "They want to break me," she confided to an aide. "But if I bend now, I'll never stand again." For Jasmine, the lawsuit wasn't just about reputation. It was about survival. Losing could brand her as reckless forever. Winning would show that even the nation's most powerful voices couldn't silence her. But what truly pushed Melania to take this risk? For years, she had preserved an image of quiet dignity. While her husband dominated headlines, she remained composed and distant. So when news spread that she was suing a sitting congresswoman for defamation, it stunned the public. It wasn't merely rare, it was historic. No First Lady in modern history had ever sued a member of Congress. Naturally, the question surfaced, why now? And why Crockett? Behind Melania's refined image existed a world more fragile than it seemed. Life as First Lady meant relentless scrutiny. Her actions questioned, her privacy dissected. Crockett's remarks, according to Melania's legal team, crossed beyond politics. They allegedly suggested unethical involvement in behind-the-scenes dealings that could permanently harm her reputation. For a woman who spent years cultivating distance from Washington's chaos, such accusations were intolerable. "This isn't about defending her husband," one analyst said on CBS. "It is about defending herself, her dignity inside the East Wing." Melania's advisors debated for weeks. Some warned a lawsuit would amplify Crockett's platform, casting her as a populist hero. Others argued silence would appear as weakness. Ultimately, Melania decided, "I will not let lies stand." Her voice, according to aides, was firm and resolute. But the decision carried high stakes. By suing, she exposed herself to public scrutiny, depositions, cross-examinations, and media investigations. Still, Melania viewed this as a chance to show strength on her own terms. Supporters rallied behind her in Texas and Florida, carrying signs reading, "Protect Melania's dignity." Conservative commentators praised her courage. Even critics admitted it was bold. Yet, as one strategist noted, the lawsuit handed Jasmine a platform. She didn't need to fight for airtime. The case guaranteed it. Melania had faced controversy before and stayed composed. But courtrooms carry uncertainty. Once a case begins, control shifts to judges, witnesses, and journalists. And that was the real danger. By suing Crockett, Melania wasn't only protecting her image. She was risking it. In court, her attorney described Crockett's remarks as reckless and misleading. "This case isn't political," he argued. "It's about accountability and preserving the integrity of the First Lady." Melania remained mostly silent during proceedings, calm and unreadable, occasionally jotting notes to her lawyer. Observers described her demeanor as cold yet composed, a sharp contrast to the room's energy. For a time, it seemed her legal team held the upper hand. Their arguments were clear, their evidence solid, but cracks soon appeared. Every defamation case relies on proof, and proof means opening doors to scrutiny. Crockett's attorneys were ready, not only to defend, but to challenge. Outside the courtroom, debates raged. Some viewed Melania's move as pride. Others saw it as strategic distraction. A late-night host joked, "When a First Lady sues a Congresswoman, that's not defamation. That's primetime television." Still, beneath the humor and speculation, something deeper unfolded. Melania, once a symbol of silence and control, was trying to redefine herself as someone who fights back. But public symbols are fragile. When they crack, they break quickly. Reporters stationed outside the Dallas courthouse knew they were witnessing a turning point. This wasn't just a legal fight. It was a clash of personalities, reputations, and America's struggle over who defines truth. For Melania, the risk was immense. For Jasmine, the opportunity was priceless. But Melania was about to learn that courtroom victories aren't won by evidence alone. They're shaped by moments. And one such moment would soon change everything. The Earl Cable Federal Building in Dallas had seen major cases before, but never one like this. From sunrise, the courthouse buzzed with activity. Satellite trucks lined the streets. Reporters from Los Angeles to Miami crowded the steps, and college students camped out to witness history. Inside, the air conditioning hummed against the Texas heat, but tension made the room feel heavy. Journalists clutching paper cups of coffee whispered predictions. Everyone knew they weren't just covering a lawsuit. They were watching a battle echoing far beyond courtroom walls. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for the gavel to strike on the front bench. Melania Trump sat upright, her beige suit perfectly tailored, hair arranged in her signature polished wave. Every motion, from adjusting her pen to lifting a glass of water, appeared precise and practiced. Across the room, Representative Jasmine Crockett carried a different presence. She leaned forward, scanning her notes, occasionally whispering to her attorney, while Melania's expression stayed unreadable. Crockett showed flashes of irritation when a camera clicked loudly, amusement at a remark from her aide, and determination whenever her eyes met Melania's table. Reporters whispered, "They're not even looking at each other." Moments later, the judge, a tall man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, entered briskly. "Court is now in session," he declared. Though his voice carried routine weight, even he seemed aware this was no ordinary hearing. As proceedings began, Melania's lead attorney, Philip Ransom, stood to address the court. His tone was smooth, almost theatrical, aimed at both jury and cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is straightforward." Representative Crockett crossed the line of free speech. She didn't critique policy or question political motives. She made personal accusations against the First Lady without evidence. Her claims were broadcast, repeated, and believed by millions. That is not politics. That is defamation. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Crockett quietly slid a note to her attorney, Linda Garvey, who smirked before tucking it into her folder. When Ransom sat, Garvey rose, her voice sharp and deliberate. "This trial isn't about dignity, it's about silencing dissent." My client spoke about influence, transparency, and accountability. The principles we expect from leaders. Mrs. Trump may dislike what was said, but dislike isn't defamation. Truth is not defamation. Punishing a sitting member of Congress for doing her job sets a dangerous precedent. Crockett met the eyes of a juror scribbling notes as Garvey spoke. The air thickened, each side crafting words not just for 12 jurors, but millions watching online. From the back, a reporter murmured, "This might be the trial of the decade," spectators whispered. A man in a baseball cap said softly, "Whatever your politics, seeing a first lady sue a congresswoman, that's wild." During recess, Crockett stood near the defense table, sipping water. "Congresswoman, do you regret your comments?" a reporter called. She didn't hesitate. "Regret," she said firmly. "Only that truth seems so fragile for some people." Laughter came from her supporters. Melania's team didn't smile. When court resumed, witnesses described how Crockett's remarks echoed through media. Melania's lawyers emphasized reputational harm. Crockett's team countered that public figures naturally face criticism that comes with the territory. By afternoon, even the judge sensed the issue went beyond defamation. It had become a battle over free speech itself. After a tense exchange, he struck his gavel. "Control yourselves," he warned. Though energy remained charged, cameras weren't allowed, but sketch artists captured every tense glance and expression. One drawing showed Crockett leaning forward, finger pointed as Melania stared ahead, lips pressed tight. As the day ended, tension only deepened. Both women had drawn battle lines, either backing down. It was clear this would be a fight unlike anything the nation had seen. But the real turning point wasn't opening arguments. It lay ahead in evidence Melania's team prepared and the counterattack Crockett's lawyers were ready to launch. By the second morning, the courtroom rhythm was set. Reporters raced up courthouse steps before sunrise. Security lines stretched around the block and the gallery filled quickly with political aides, law students, and curious locals. When the judge nodded, Ransom rose again, confident, composed. His navy suit looked freshly pressed despite Dallas humidity. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began. "Words have consequences. This case isn't about politics. It's about reputation and truth." Representative Crockett crossed the line when she accused the First Lady of involvement in baseless matters. These weren't passing remarks. They were broadcast to millions, causing real harm. He paused, letting silence settle. "The First Lady is not here as a politician," he continued. "She is here as a woman, a wife, a mother whose name was unjustly tarnished. We ask you to hold Representative Crockett accountable." Jurors took notes. Reporters typed rapidly. Melania sat still, hands folded neatly. Occasionally, she leaned toward Ransom, whispering softly. Ransom called his first witness Simon Lyer, a media analyst from Arizona who studied how stories spread online. He displayed charts showing how Crockett's comments circulated nationwide. "These statements didn't remain in Washington," Lyer said. "They became part of the national conversation, amplifying damage to Mrs. Trump's image." Ransom asked, "Did these remarks alter public perception of the First Lady?" "Yes," Lyer replied. "They portrayed her unfairly and inaccurately." Next came Dana Mercer, a public relations expert from Phoenix, who testified about how false narratives cause lasting harm, even after correction. "That's the power of perception," she explained. Ransom faced the jury again. "This isn't criticism of policy. It's reckless words aimed at a person sitting right here." He gestured toward Melania, who looked calmly at jurors, expression steady but fragile. Yet under cross-examination, cracks appeared. Garvey stood. "Mr. Lyer, you said Representative Crockett's remarks spread quickly. Correct?" "Yes." "Would you agree the First Lady is already among the most scrutinized women in the world?" "Yes." "And that public figures naturally face harsh criticism?" "Yes." "So what you're saying isn't that she created scrutiny, but contributed to what already existed?" Ransom objected, but the judge allowed it. Lyer hesitated, then admitted, "That's one way to put it." Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards. Garvey pressed Mercer. If a statement is true, is it defamation? No. And who decides what's true or false? The court does. Exactly. Garvey smiled faintly and returned to her seat. The defense found footing. Melania's strong start weakened under careful questioning. As lunch recess began, the courthouse steps overflowed with reporters and microphones. A journalist called out, "If Melania wins, does that mean?" But the question drowned in chatter, echoing. Intensity inside. Does every member of Congress guard words, or is she shielding herself from falsehoods? Asked an attorney. Where's the real boundary? Melania sat quietly at the plaintiff's table. Her lawyers gathered close in hushed discussion. Across the room, Jasmine Crockett shared a brief laugh with her team, the sound faintly echoing. Two distinct atmospheres in one courtroom. One side reserved and tense, the other alive with confidence and purpose. By day's end, jurors heard Melania's claim essence. Words carry weight, reputations matter, and Crockett's remarks caused measurable harm. But few anticipated how sharply momentum would turn once Crockett's defense began. When their turn came, Crockett's attorneys weren't only ready to counter. They were ready to redefine the narrative. As defense prepared, the courtroom buzzed with expectation. Reporters framed the case as a clash between free expression and personal reputation. Crockett sat still, arms folded, expression calm, focus razor-sharp like a fighter awaiting the bell. Her lead counsel, Linda Garvey, stood with a thick binder, but didn't open it. Her first words came confidently. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice clear and firm. "This case isn't about dignity. It's about silencing a voice. A voice daring to ask difficult questions and challenge influence and authority. Representative Crockett didn't fabricate stories. She spoke what millions of Americans already thought. And now the First Lady wants to punish her for saying it aloud." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Crockett's gaze found a juror leaning forward attentively. She didn't smile, but her expression said enough. "I'm not backing down." Garvey then called the first witness, Dr. Anthony Ward, a political historian from the University of Texas at Austin. He testified about the long role of elected officials questioning public figures. "Democracy relies on scrutiny," he said. "Public criticism isn't just permitted, it's essential. If we penalize representatives for speaking about those in power, we weaken democracy's foundation." Ransom rose swiftly for cross-examination. "Dr. Ward, are you implying public officials can say anything, regardless of damage?" Ward stayed composed. "I'm saying criticism of public figures is vital. If accountability silences dissent, we lose something more important than reputation." Crockett leaned toward Garvey and whispered, "That's the line right there." Garvey nodded. The next witness, Angela Moreno, a community organizer from Fort Worth, added emotional weight. "She's always spoken for us," Moreno testified. "She says what we're afraid to say. If she can be sued for that, what hope do the rest have?" Ransom objected, calling it irrelevant. The judge allowed testimony. Finally, Crockett testified. The courtroom fell silent as she took the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, and faced questioning. Reporters leaned forward, pens ready. "Congresswoman Crockett," Garvey began. "Why did you make the comments leading to this lawsuit?" Crockett's tone was calm yet resolute because the American people deserve honesty.